हो गए ना टाइम? हुजूर हुजूर वाला टाइम हो गया? हो गया है? एक मिनट है। शुरू। इन्नल्लाह व मलाइकतहु युसल्लूना अलन नबी या अय्युहल्लज़ीना आमनू सल्लु अलैहि व सल्लिमू तस्लीमा। अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला मुहम्मदिन व आलि मुहम्मद। इन्नल्लाह व मलाइकतहु युसल्लूना अलन नबी या अय्युहल्लज़ीना आमनू सल्लु अलैहि व सल्लिमू तस्लीमा। सुब्हानल्लाहि वल्हम्दुलिल्लाहि व ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह वल्लाहु अकबर। अल्लाहु अकबर अल्लाहु अकबर अल्लाहु अकबर अल्लाहु अकबर। अशहदु अन ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह अशहदु अन ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह अशहदु अन्ना मुहम्मदर रसूलुल्लाह। अशहदु अन्ना मुहम्मदर रसूलुल्लाह। अशहदु अन्ना अमीरल मोमिनीना व इमामल मुत्तकीना अलियन वलियुल्लाह। अशहदु अन्ना अमीरल मोमिनीना व इमामल मुत्तकीना अलियन हुज्जतुल्लाह। हय्या अलस सलाह हय्या अलस सलाह हय्या अलल फलाह हय्या अलल फलाह हय्या अला खैरिल अमाल हय्या अला खैरिल अमाल। अल्लाहु अकबर अल्लाहु अकबर। ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह। बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। अल्लाहुम्मा जअल क़ल्बी बार व अमली सार व शिखार व रिज़्क़ दार व वजल क़ब्र नबी का सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम मुस्तक़र बक़रार बरहमतिका या अरहमर राहिमीन। अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि।
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي كان موجودا قبل حدوث الأشياء ويبقى بعد فناء الأشياء تفرد بالأولية والقدم ووسع كل شيء ما عداه بالفناء والعدم كما قال عز شأن كل شيء هالك إلا وجهه وكل نفس ذائقة الموت وقال كل من عليها فان ويبقى وجه ربك ذو الجلال والإكرام سبحان من لا يخفى عليه اختلاف النيات ولا يعزب عنه معاصي العباد في الخلوات سبحان الله الذي منه خلقة العباد وإليه المعاد فمن يعمل مثقال ذرة خيرا يره ومن يعمل مثقال ذرة شرا يره نشهد أن لا إله إلا هو الملك الذي لا ينازع في ملكه ولا يضاد في حكمه يعذب من يشاء بما يشاء كيف يشاء ويرحم من يشاء بما يشاء كيف يشاء تعذيبه المسيئين عدل وعفوه تفضل ونشهد أن محمدا سيد المرسلين وخير المبشرين والمنذرين صلى الله عليه وآله الهداة المهديين من ركب سفينتهم نجا واهتدى ومن تخلف عنها ضل فغرق وهوى أوصيكم عباد الله بالاعتصام بالتقوى فإنه حبل متين وأروة وثقى فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أفلا ينظرون إلى الإبل كيف خلقت وإلى السماء كيف رفعت وإلى الجبال كيف نصبت وإلى الأرض كيف سطحت صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات صل على Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. I begin by advising myself and all of you to adopt the taqwa of Allah, practice piety as is the best of provisions. The verses that I recited for today's khutbah of Jum'ah is from Surah Ghashiyah, chapter number 88 from the Holy Quran, ayat 17, 18, 19, and 20. The verses say, "Do they not observe the camel to see how it has been created, and the sky how it has been raised, and the mountains how they have been set, and the earth how it has been spread?" You would say, well, all the things that are going on, why would I choose these ayat for today's khutbah of Jummah, and how it is related? Just a couple of weeks ago, you heard in the news, Indian politician used derogatory words while speaking about Rasul Akram Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam. She referenced saying that Prophet married a 6-year-old, hinting towards pedophilia and misconstruing the verses of Quran, specifically this ayat, chapter 88, verse number 20. And the earth, how it has been spread or surfaced, sutihat, which she translated as how the earth is flat, and therefore Quran considers the earth to be flat, and therefore the Quran's proof is wrong, and therefore Quran is wrong. Of course, in these ayat, the discussion of camel, sky, mountains, and then the earth. You'd imagine, what is the combination of these four things? There's hikmat in the kalam-e-ilahi. There's a wisdom behind it. What is the wisdom of mentioning these four? Well, camel, we understand where this Quran was revealed. It was a common knowledge regarding camel. People had immense knowledge about camels, and therefore it wouldn't be easy to give an example about that, which the people of that area are well aware of. But you might say, well, we've never seen a camel. Especially children grew up in this country, they might say, they've never seen a camel. If you were brought up in India and Pakistan, you may have seen it during the time of Eid al-Adha. But other than that, here, you say, well, I've never seen a camel. So how this example does not relate to me? Secondly, the example of the skies. You say, well, we've never traveled to the skies, so that example also does not relate to me. Third, the mountains. Maybe you've never been to a place, you've only seen mountains in the pictures, but you've never been to a mountainous area. And lastly, the earth. So 4 examples are being given: camel, sky, earth, and as well as the mountains. Well, if you have not seen a camel, if you have not been to the skies in the fadha, or whatever the word sky over here refers to, and if you have not been around mountains, you do not know anything about them, then at least you have walked over the earth. So by walking over the earth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to establish a point over here. He says these ayat are supposed to invoke the concept of tawheed in you, that the earth that you walk upon is surfaced and is spread so you can easily walk over it. Not necessarily hinting to the fact that, earth, which was an olden concept, that earth is flat and it's not in the shape of a ball. That was an olden concept. Islam never propagated that, never condoned it. In fact, none of the riwayat of the Masumeen, which are authentic, refer toward this concept. And therefore, to misuse this ayat, misconstrue, because nobody's going to go ahead and research. And so ayat number 20 from chapter 88 says the earth is flat, and she moved on with the second discussion regarding the Holy Prophet. These 2 things left in the mind. Of course, people did not really pick up on the first one, the ayat number 20 of chapter 88. Maybe many people missed. But this lady became famous for what she said regarding Rasulullah, the outrage that happened around the globe. So the second issue, which became the discussion and has been the discussion for quite some time now, and many khutbah of Jum'ah have been given regarding this, and many protests have happened around the globe, here in the United States, in other countries as well, showing the outrage. Many Muslim countries have officially announced condemnation letters and boycotting many of the things because this personnel was related to the government. And of course, the government of India, the ruling party, removed this person from their party because it was giving a bad image to them. But here, the point still remains, because someone of that sort of authority goes out and says something and then leaves the scene. What did it create? It created a debate. Now there's back and forth going on over social media, over other medias, television, where you have these debates. Anchors are bringing in these people, they're debating, and they're talking about this. Well, this is proven. Zakir Naik said this, there was no problem for you, but this lady said it, now you have a problem with it. Your own scholars are saying the same thing regarding the age of Ummul-Mu'mineen, and now when someone else says it, now you have a problem with it. Why this sort of double standard? We see that the second issue that was issued by Nupur Sharma, which everyone is talking about, is the age of Ummul-Mu'mineen. Her age is not a question of Quran, nor is it a question of the Sunnah of Rasulullah. Rather, it has to do with the history of Islam. You have to go research the pages of Tariq to find out what the historians have said. Unfortunately, the historians that are established who started documenting, the first of which is Ibn Ishaq, who came almost a century later, 80 some years later. And then those who took from him, such as Hisham and Tabari, and one of the oldest books of history, Tabaqat ibn Sa'ad, these are all books of Ahl Sunnah, by the way. They have referenced, so if you go ahead and see the section on Ummul-Mu'mineen in Tabaqat ibn Sa'ad, you will find this discussion which I'm presenting to you. Sahabiya by the name Khawla, she suggested to Rasulullah after the wafat of Hazrat Khadija salamullah alayha that, "O Rasulullah, after the demise of your wife, which you were married to for 25 years, I see you that you are now, got kids at home, you got children at home. At least one daughter is there, Janab Sayyida is there. The other daughters, those who were raised by Rasulullah, they're also there. Maybe they're married, they're older, but at least one daughter is there who's young right now, hasn't been married. And now you're a man of 50 years old with a young child at home, and your wife has passed away. I see that you're responsible for the ummah as well, as far as the propagation is concerned. All of these things are upon you at this moment. You need someone who can run the affairs of the house. You need a motherly figure, someone who's able to take care of the children in the house. You need someone who can provide comfort to you as well. And you need someone who can take care of the kids at home as well." Rasulullah said to Khawla, "Do you have anyone in mind?" She said, "Yeah, there are two options. One is Sauda binte Zam'a or Ram'a, her name is. And the other one is Aisha binte Abi Bakr. These are the two options that we have available." Sauda was about 50 years old at that time. And there's a dispute on the age of daughter of first caliph. Rasulullah went ahead and sent the proposal to both. Now, this conversation is taking place between a grown man who's 50 years old, Nabi of the Ummah, and a lady who's concerned, relative or Sahabiya, regarding Rasulullah, that I see that you're now, after the wafat of your wife, you're saddened. Rasulullah called it to be Amul Huzn, the year of grief. It was a very big grief for Rasulullah after having lost Nabi Khadija salamullah alayha. I see you in this situation, now I want to make sure I help you out. You think in this sort of conversation, this Sahabiya would be referring to a girl who's 6 years old to come be married to Rasulullah so that she can fulfill, of course, the needs of the Prophet and as well as take care of the kids in the house. If there are children in the house, Rasulullah is going to go ahead and marry another 6-year-old to come and take care of what? Add it on to the list of the kids that are already inside the house? This conversation would not make any sense. And therefore, if you refer, and I'm reading this from Tabaqat ibn Sa'ad, he said, why do you remarry? Why do you, after, someone loses their wife, why do they remarry? One of the main purposes is for the children, for the sake of the children. And if the children are young, you go ahead and marry someone who's that young, who's going to be accounted as amongst, or even sometimes younger than your children in the house. Does that make sense? And plus, Rasulullah is in need of taking care of the children who are in the house. So Rasulullah extends the proposal to both, but he marries Sauda right away, brings her home. She's in the history documented that she was the first wife after the wafat of Hazrat Khadija that Rasulullah had married. Rasulullah marries her, she comes to the house of Rasulullah, she starts doing those tasks for which Rasulullah was in need. And then a few years pass by. Until then, the first caliph refers to Rasulullah, "Oh Rasulullah, why don't you take your wife home now?" So the period of about 3 years, Rasulullah approaches Sauda and says to her that, "I know you're older, and I have another proposal that I had married. I'm about to bring her to the house. If you feel that you will be compromised, then I'm ready to, set you free." She said, "Rasulullah, at this age, I don't really have any inclination toward getting married again. I want to spend the rest of my life being the wife of Rasulullah, and that is the biggest honor for me." Rasulullah goes ahead and brings the daughter of the first caliph to his house at that time. So she is the third wife of Rasulullah. With this background that I mentioned to you, here in Arabic, you say, well, then why the number 6 and 9 is so widespread that even this lady, Nupur Sharma, she quoted that Rasulullah contracted marriage at the age of 6 and then the rukhsati was done at the age of 9. So there was a concept of getting married and then rukhsati. It's not our own thing. This is something which existed in the past as well. Same thing with Amirul Mu'mineen and Janab Fatmatul Zahra salamullah alaiha as well, that they got married and then the rukhsati was a little bit later. This is customary. But this rukhsati took place after 3 years. They said, why the number 6 and 9? In Arabic, numbers after 10 are murakkab, consist of 2 words. In English, up until 20, you have single word. After 20, you have murakkab, 2 words. So from 1 to 20, you have single word. But from 21, 22, you have 2 words that are put together as a combined and combination. Similar is the case in Arabic. After ashara, which is 10, you have ihda ashar, ithna ashar, talata ashar, arbata ashar, khamsa ashar, and so on and so forth. In the books of history, somewhere, the word ashar was removed or missed or misprinted or got erased. And what remained was sitta wa tis'a, when it should have been sitta ashar and when it should have been tis'a ashar. The Rasulullah contracted the marriage at the age of 16 and the rukhsati took place at the age of 19. Salawat Beji Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. So of course, this logical concept, and this is basically just from history. This is not, thinking about it, because history is not something where you use, philosophy and mantiq and all that stuff. History is there. It's in the books. Yes, there's discrepancy in history sometimes. That's what you go ahead and sort out. That's why we find many different riwayat as far as the shahadat of Janab Sayyida is concerned. The most beloved in our madhab. Yet, we are uncertain whether it was the 13th of Jamadul Ula or whether it was the 3rd of Jamadul Thaniya. There's a debate. But we go ahead and commemorate her shahadat on both of those things. So marriages of Rasulullah, I just want to very briefly focus on that. Why did Prophet had this freedom to marry as many wives as the books of history mention? History tells us that Prophet remained married to Hazrat Khadija until she died and did not take another wife. Only after her death, her passing away, at the age of 52, Rasulullah remarried for the first time, not primarily at that age fulfilling his carnal desires. Rather, there were political reasons, giving shelter to the widows, people's inclination to establish relationship with Rasulullah, because if we have nasab with Rasulullah, our nasab will be high and above others. So, the myth, did Prophet marry a 6-year-old? There are about 1, 2, 3, 4 different historical evidences, aside from the one which I just mentioned to you. I'll run through these very quickly. Number 1, Hisham ibn Urwa. Mention these, remember these names, they are the key to solving many of these issues. Because that's the concept, unfortunately, has been developed in non-Muslims primarily. We're all in it together, whether you're Shia or Sunni or whatever. We're all in it together because non-Muslims are attacking primarily based on this, assassinating the character of the most beloved individual, the Holy Prophet. And similar thing happened later on after the wafat of Rasulullah. When you look at the history, repeated itself, they try to tarnish the character of our second Imam, Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba alayhi salatu wasalam as well. To the extent that there's a riwayat associated to Amirul Mu'mineen telling people of Kufa, don't give your daughters in marriage to Hassan, innahu rajulun mitlaq. Don't give your daughters in marriage to Hassan, my son. Why? Because he's a person who gives a lot of talaq. Associated with Rasulullah. And of course, that's another discussion for another time. Number first evidence is Hisham ibn Urwa. Most of these narratives that you find the age of 6 and 9 printed in the hadith books are reported only by Hisham ibn Urwa, reporting on the authority of his father. First of all, more people than just 1, 2, or 3 should have logically reported this. You know, there were many people around. They should have all gone ahead and reported this, that there was discrepancy, but only one person is. It is strange that no one from Medina, where Hisham ibn Urwa lived the first 70 years of his life, has narrated the event, even though in Medina, students of his, such as Malik ibn Anas and others were there. The origins of this report, of the narrative of this event, is something which is blemished because people from Iraq, where Hisham ibn Urwa is reported to have shifted after living in Medina for all these years. Based on these references, Hisham's memory was failing and his narratives while in Iraq were unreliable. Therefore, the age which is mentioned and referenced with the hadith to Hisham ibn Urwa is what? Baseless and is unreliable. Number 2, engagement. According to Tabari, also according to Hisham ibn Urwa, Ibn Hanbal and Ibn Sa'ad, al-Mu'mineen was engaged at the age of 7, not 6, and began to cohabit with Rasulullah at the age of 9. However, in another book, Tabari, the same Tabari who narrated 7 years, all 4 of the first caliph's children were born of his 2 wives during the pre-Islamic period. Pre-Islamic period means what? Pre-Islamic period is when Rasulullah received the first revelation, right? That's the pre-Islamic era. So Rasulullah received the first revelation at the age of 40. All of the daughters of the first Khalifa were born in pre-Islamic era, meaning all the daughters were born at least prior to the year 40 of Rasulullah. Rasulullah marries Sauda at the age of 52, and then 3 years later to Hazrat Aisha, meaning what? That at least she was 15 or 16 years old at that time. So that is also at-Tabari, while quoting 2 different riwayat, one mentioning that she was 7 and then 9, and then quoting at another place saying that all of the daughters of Abu Bakr were born when? Prior to the prophetic mission. Therefore, Tabari is unreliable in the matter determining the age. The age of Hazrat Aisha in relation to the age of Bibi Fatima. If you look at this reference as well, according to Ibn Hajar, and all of these are again Sunni references, Al-Sunnah references if anyone needs it. Fatima, Salamullahi alayha, was born at the time the Kaaba was rebuilt, when the Prophet was 35 years of age. According to the historical references of Ahl Sunnah, Janab Sayyidah was born 5 years prior to the Bi'sat of Rasulullah. Many of our traditions mention that she was born 5 years after the Bi'sat of Rasulullah, meaning that at the time of her Shahada, she was either 18 or she was 28. But nonetheless, that is not the debate at the moment. According to this book, she was born 5 years prior to the Bi'sat of Rasulullah, when Rasulullah is 35. Janab Fatima was 5 years older than Bibi Aisha. Therefore, based on Ibn Hajar, Janab Fatima was born when Prophet was 35. Aisha was 5 years younger than Janab Fatima. If Ibn Hajar's statement is factual, then she was born at least when Rasulullah was 40 years old. And when Rasulullah married her, she was at least 12, 13, or above. Conclusion: Ibn Hajar, Tabari, and Ibn Hisham and Ibn Hanbal contradict each other So the marriage of Bibi Aisha at the age of 7 is again myth accordingly. Last evidence, inshallah, I'll conclude with that. The age of Bibi Aisha in reference to her sister Asma, right? She was the older daughter of Abu Bakr. According to Abdurrahman, Ibn Abi Zannad and Ibn Kathir, the Asma was 10 years older than Bibi Aisha. 10 years older. And Asma passed away in the year 73 after Hijrah. So she lived a long life, even 12 years after the event of Karbala. And it's mentioned that she was 100 years old at the time of her wafat. So if she passed away in the year 73 after Hijrah, when Tariq was there's more authenticity coming into the Tawarikh, and she was 100 years old at that time, how old is she at the time of the migration? She's 27 years old at the time of migration. Rasulullah started cohabiting with Bibi Aisha 2 years after that. So that means she was 29. Minus 10 years, Bibi Aisha was 19 at least, if not more. All of these proofs are provided. Ibn Hajar is an unreliable source in concluding the age of Bibi Aisha. Here, at the end, the reason why this discussion is now a hot topic, and we need to be able to provide, because we are together in this. When someone attacks someone you love, such as Rasulullah, this of course brings in this anger. And then anger translates into people doing all sorts of things. No. Sit down and remind people, tell them that this is merely a myth. Why continue to brag onto something? This has become such a wrong notion that non-Muslims quote this left and right. And the only concept of quoting this, the age of Bibi Aisha 6 or 9, is to show the character of Rasulullah, to dent the character of Rasulullah, to somehow marginalize the character of Rasulullah, because there's nothing else that they can find to go ahead and put their fingers upon. We are the one fueling this concept by providing these proofs. You can easily rebuke and rebuttal these things that exist in the books of history, merely an error, and of course it does not make any sense. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give us a tawfiq and ability to be able to look at the historical events and understand. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us insight into these historical events. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the reappearance of our awaited Imam, make us amongst the helpers and the soldiers of Imam. إن أحسن الحديث وأبلغ الموعظة كتاب الله أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحليم الكريم غافر الذنب وقابل التوب وهو الغفور الرحيم سبحان من سبقت رحمته غضبه وبسط اليدين بالرحمة سبحان من لم يكلف نفسا إلا دون وسعها فعن السيئات ولم يجاز بها سبحان من لا يزداد ولا معصي لعباد إلا كرما وجودا ولا كثرة الذنوب إلا فوصف نشهد أن لا إله إلا هو لطوف على العباد بجوده والعباد المذنبين بعلمه ونشهد أن محمدا نبيه وحبيبه سيد المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين بعثه رحمة للعالمين ألا قد أمركم الله في محكم كتابه بالصلاة على نبيه وحبيبه فقال تعليما لكم وتشريفا للصفية إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيد المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وعلى إمام المسلمين وقائد الغر المحجلين أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى سيدة نساء العالمين وبدأت خاتم النبيين سيدتنا فاطمة بنت رسول الله صلوات الله عليها وعلى الحسن المجتبى والحسين الشهيد بكربلاء وعلي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي عليهم الصلاة والسلام. اللهم صل على مولانا صاحب الزمان ماهي آثار البدع والطغيان هادم أبنية الشرك والنفاق حاسد فروع البغي والشقاق صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آبائه الكرام اتصلت الليالي والأيام. اللهم عجل فرجا وسهل مخرجا واكحل ناظرنا بنظرة منا إليه واجعلنا من المستشهدين بين يديه وتفضل على أمراء المؤمنين بمزيد التوفيقات وازدياد الإقبال وعلو الدرجات. اللهم افعل بنا ما أنت أهله ولا تفعل بنا ما نحن أهله بجاه محمد وآله المعصومين صلوات الله عليهم أجمعين. ذكر فتنفع الذكرى إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يسبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض الملك القدوس العزيز الحكيم. هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين وآخرين منهم لما يلحقوا بهم وهو العزيز الحكيم. ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله ذو الفضل العظيم. مثل الذين حملوا التوراة ثم لم يحملوها كمثل الحمار يحمل أسفارا بئس مثل القوم الذين كذبوا بآيات الله والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين. قل يا أيها الذين هادوا إن زعمتم أنكم أولياء لله من دون الناس فتمنوا الموت إن كنتم صادقين ولا يتمنونه أبدا بما قدمت أيديهم والله عليم بالظالمين. قل إن الموت الذي تفرون منه فإنه ملاقيكم ثم تردون إلى عالم الغيب والشهادة فينبئكم بما كنتم تعملون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون. فإذا قضيت الصلاة فانتشروا في الأرض وابتغوا من فضل الله واذكروا الله كثيرا لعلكم تفلحون. وإذا رأوا تجارة أو لهوا انفضوا إليها وتركوك قائما قل ما عند الله خير من اللهو ومن التجارة والله خير الرازقين. الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته يقوم ويقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمد. الله أكبر. وربنا أفرغ علينا صبرا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين بجاه محمد وآله الطاهرين. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. تسبيح جناب فاطمة الزهراء سلام الله عليها. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. All of us together. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة لابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Let's just recognize the sponsors for today's Jummah lunch. It's the family of Mr. and Mrs. Jafar Naqvi. Please recite a Surah Fatiha for their deceased relatives as well as yours. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Quickly, a couple of announcements. Inshallah, tonight, there's a youth program, inshallah, starting at 8 p.m., discussion, and then followed by Salat, ages 15 and above. Topic of discussion is the disease of more, and of course, not limited to this, anything else that is going around. Inshallah, you're more than welcome to join. Even, adults, if they want to join, doesn't have to remain only. If you're bringing your children, you can also take part in it. Also, tomorrow, so this program will be at 8 p.m., and then Salat is around 8:50, so we'll conclude with namaz. Tomorrow, there's a Chehlum Majlis for the Isal Sawab of Marhum Asif Ali Sheikh. It'll start at 6 p.m. with Quran Khani and followed by Majlis-e-Aza. Inshallah, of course, everything will finish before Salatul Maghrib. Also, you might have noticed when you came in, Sadiq School PTO is pleased to sell various items, including food, Islamic kids' toys, Eid gifts. Eid is around the corner, and much more. So please join in this cause and support Sadiq School. So they will be out there from 2 to 4. As the Salat ends, you can stop over. There are a variety of items. Support Sadiq School as well as the local vendors that are taking part in it. Weekend is around, so therefore, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Masjid-e-Ali has Salatul Fajr. These 3 days specifically because there's breakfast served right after that. So Salatul Fajr tomorrow morning, inshallah, will be at 4:45 a.m. Followed by, of course, we will have the group recitation of Quran and the tafsir of Quran. Followed that, inshallah, we'll have the hot breakfast in the banquet hall's basement. And then similarly, on Sunday, we recite Dua Sabah and Ziyat Ashura, followed by our breakfast in the basement. So do join us for both of these events, inshallah. Before I request for the Dua Sahat, let us remember all of those people who are in need of dua, those who are going through difficult times, suffering, struggling, physically, financially, spiritually. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring all of these people out of their difficulties and give them a quick and swift recovery. Specifically, remember Sister Kareem Zahra, request for dua sahat, and as well as all of the people, our own brother Muhammad Abbas Rizvi, keep him in your du'as as well. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Amma yujibu al-mustarra idha da'ahu yakshifu as-su. 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 Amma yujibu al-mustarra idha da'ahu yakshifu as-su wa yaj'alukum khulafa al-ard. Allahumma Allah qalilan ma tadhakkarun. Allahumma salli. Well, we're still going through the COVID period, and inshallah we can look behind now as we move forward. But of course, mask is still mandate when you come to masjid. But looking at how people are sitting, we had these blue tapes so that we would sit with distance. I guess if you don't want to follow that, that's okay. But now don't have few people sitting on the tapes and then there's gap and then some people sitting next to each other. So I see some gaps around. Please fill these gaps so that there are no more gaps as you're standing all together in Jamaat. It looks like a Jamaat, otherwise it looks very, it's not really formed. And therefore, just keep your masks on at all times, and inshallah, we should be good with that. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Fill in the gaps here. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العالى وبحمده الله أكبر استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العالى وبحمده الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله أكبر اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار بجاه محمد وآله الأطهار الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته يقوم وأقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.
اللهم صل على
محمد وآل
صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. تسبيح فاطمة الزهراء سلام الله عليها. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام. وأسأله أن يتوب علي توبة عبد ذليل خازن فقير بائس مسكين مستكين مستجير لا يملك لنفسه نفعا ولا ضرا वला मौता वला हयाता वला नुशूरा। अल्लाहुम्मा इन्नी अऊज़ु बिका मिन नफ्सिन ला तशबा व मिन क़ल्बिन ला यख्शा व मिन इल्मिन ला यनफ़ा व मिन सलातिन ला तुरफ़ा व मिन दुआइन ला युस्मा। अल्लाहुम्मा इन्नी अस्अलुकल युस्र बादल उस्र वल फ़रज बादल कर्ब वर्रख़ा बाद शिद्दा। अल्लाहुम्मा मा बिना मिन नेमतिन फ़मिन्क ला इलाहा इल्ला अंत अस्तग़फ़िरुका व अतूबु इलैक। अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला मुहम्मद व आलि मुहम्मद।
Mutawajjih Ziyarah. Today let's start the Ziyarat of Imam Muhammad Taqi Jawad alayhi Islam. Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum ya Nabiyullah, Assalamu alaikum ya Amir al-Mu'minin, ya Qasim al-Jannati wa Nar, Assalamu alaikum ya Insan Alimin. Assalamu alaikum ya Muhammad ibn Ali al-Barr Taqi al-Imam al-Wafiyya. Assalamu alaikum ya Razi al-Zaki. Assalamu alaikum ya Naji Allah, ya Safir Allah, ya Wali Allah, ya Sir Allah, ya Ziya Allah. Assalamu alaikum ya Sana Allah, ya Kalimatullah, ya Rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum ayyuhat tayyibu min at-tayyibin. Assalamu alaikum ayyuhat tahiru min al-mutahhirin. Assalamu alaikum ayatul uzma. Assalamu alaikum ayyul hujjatul kubra. Assalamu alaikum ya nurullah fi zulumatil ars. Assalamu alaikum ya ibn Rasulullah. Assalamu alaikum wala abaika. Assalamu alaikum wala abnaika. Assalamu alaikum wala awliyaika. Ashhadu annaka qad qamta as-salat wa atayta az-zakat wa amarta bil ma'ruf wa nahayta 'anil munkar wa talawta al-kitaba haqqa tilawati wa jahadta fillahi haqqa jihadi wa sabarta 'alal azza fi janbi hatta taqlaqin. Ataytuka zairan arifan bihaqqika wa muwaliyan li awliyaik wa muadiyan li adaik fashwali inda rabbik. Assalamu alaikum ya ahlal bayt an-nubuwwa jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum ya sahib ar-asr wa zaman. Ya Khalifat ar-Rahman, ya Imam al-Insa wal Jan, ya Kabat al-Iman, ya Tafsir al-Qur'an. Assalamu alaikum ya Shariq al-Qur'an. Assalamu alaikum ya Imam al-Zamana, ajallallahu farajak wa sallallahu farajak wa zuhurak wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.